Alrighty, it's that time again. So we've got Caeser coming in version 1.2, and although she's classified as a defense character, she scales off of impact and does a lot of daze, while also providing attack and damage buffs, and she also provides shield and interrupt resistances for the team. So surely a defense character can't hang with other stun characters, right? A jack of all trades but a master of none, as they say. Well, thanks to the version 1.2 content creator experience server, we can put that to the test. As always, this is a test version, so things are subject to change, and if anything does change, then I'll put a pinned comment down below. In this video, we're not going to do a comparison across the board, but rather I'll be pitting Caeser up against our first premium stun unit, Qingyi. I think this is an interesting matchup that many people are curious about, as Qingyi and Caeser do typically fight over the same spot within a team. So if you want to see a comparison against the rest of the stun cast, then I do have a video on that on my channel, which I'll link down below. Like my other videos, let's talk methodology first. This is a TTS comparison, also known as time to stun, so all we care about is the time it takes to bring the enemy from 0 days to the stunned state. I record my fights and I use my editing software to find the exact starting frame in all encounters to set my starting marker. Depending on the type of fight, the starting frame could either be the first instance of damage appearing, or the first orange flash of a defensive assist, or the first blue flash of a perfect dodge counter. And then we find our finishing mark by looking for the exact frame that the stun meter appears. Once we have our starting and finishing markers, we can then line the clips up and get an accurate comparison between each clip. Variables, of course, will be how enemies behave between each encounter and how I play the characters. Though I do go through multiple runs each time, making sure that I play the characters the same way, and I do try to find fights in which the enemies behave in similar ways as well, just to keep it fair. And now here are our two contestants in the game. We've got a level 60 Caeser and Qingyi with level 12 skills across the board. The equipment that I use across both characters will be identical. I swap between Caeser and Qingyi before I do my test. So they're both using a 4-piece stun set along with an impact disk drive in slot 6. And both characters will be using their signature engines at P1. Okay, so now for the first test. So we usually start off with just a solo character test against a static enemy, and let me say this straight off the bat, it's going to be very unfair for Caeser, who wants an active enemy that she can counter. That said though, Qingyi also gets some additional days off of dodge counters, which she won't have access to either, so let's see if that makes any sort of difference between them. So the combo I use against the static Fabuati is just an EX into EX follow-up, followed by a full basic combo to build up more EX meter before I do another EX. I just repeat this until I get the stun. The Fabuati is a pretty good monster to test on since it's weak against ice and ether, but it's got no resistances to other elements, which means it doesn't give any advantage or disadvantage to either of our characters that we're testing today. Over on the Qingyi side, we do our standard combo, opening up with a charged EX skill to skip the opening basic string. This lets us go straight into our electric field attack. From there, we're going to fill up our bar before unleashing our enhanced charged attack. From there, we throw out another charged EX, which gets us close to stun, but not quite, so we do another second or two of the electric field before triggering the stun with our charged attack. Alright, so here's the side-by-side comparison, and it's pretty clear that Qingyi blows Caeser out of the water here, finishing in 11 seconds compared to Caesar's 21 seconds. This is almost double the TTS of Qingyi. But like I said though, this is a very unfair and very unrealistic comparison, as Caeser does get a large impact buff from using her counters, which she doesn't have access to here. So let's turn on enemy movement and see if that changes anything. We're going to be doing the same fight, but this time we'll open up with a defensive assist for both characters. The Fabuati has some pretty great attacks for maximizing daze build up, especially with its stop attack, which lets us get off multiple counters in a row. Qingyi is also able to take advantage of this by doing multiple dodge attacks in a row as well, so it's a pretty fair comparison for both characters, so I'll let it play out and let's see how they go. Okay, and now here's the side-by-side comparison. Now, isn't this a surprise? From being 10 seconds slower to straight up winning the race, albeit only by 1 second, but hey, a win is a win. So we can see here that against a hyper-aggressive enemy, shield counters do more for Caeser than dodge counters do for Qingyi. Alright, let's just jump into our next test. So this time it's against a Dullahan from the Expert Challenge. This is another pretty fair test since Dullahans don't have any weaknesses to either character's main element, and it also has a much smaller days meter compared to the Fabuati as well, so we'll see if either characters have an edge in this much shorter fight. So how about that? Did anyone expect these results? So it seems like Caesar definitely has the much faster days application in these shorter fights. I think it's because of how front loaded these EX counters are. If you're able to toss out 2 or 3 of them really quickly, it's just a massive amount of stun. Okay, next up we have the armored Hati. So this is going to be pretty similar to the last fight. He does have a slightly larger days meter though, but it's probably not enough to make much of a difference. At this point, we've got a pretty good idea of where Caesar stands in comparison to Qingyi when it comes to TTS. And so there we go, a similar story as the last 2 encounters. We're once again between 1 to 2 seconds of difference between the 2 characters, and I think it's now safe to say that Caesar is pretty much on par with Qingyi when it comes to stun. I wouldn't go as far as to say that she's the better stun character, as 1 to 2 seconds difference is so small that something as minor as an enemy deciding not to throw out an attack would make up the difference. But let's throw our girl Qingyi a bone here. Let's see how she stacks up against an electric weak enemy compared to Caesar. And so there we go. This fight does benefit Qingyi a lot more than Caesar, not only due to the electric weakness, but also due to the rate of attacks from the boss. We can see that Caesar definitely needed to wait a little bit longer between attacks this time compared to before, which means that she wasn't able to rapidly throw out her EX skills. All in all, that disadvantage led to less than a 5-second difference in the favour of Qingyi. So let's wrap up our thoughts here. Personally, this came as a surprise to me. I knew that Caesar was going to be a very versatile jack-of-all-trades character, and although I knew that she would be a viable stun character, I always assumed that she wouldn't stack up to a pure stun character in order to balance out the rest of her kit. The thing is, Qingyi isn't the best stunner herself. I showed it in my stun showdown video that Qingyi was actually one of the slower stunners out of the stun cast in order to make up for the amount of damage buffs that she provides to her team, which makes sense. But at the end of the day, she's still a stun character. But here we are, a defense character with the same ability to stun as our first premier stun character. so that's definitely surprising. When it comes down to it though, if we take a step back and look at their overall kits, Qingyi still has her place. It's not like Caeser has simply taken over her role. Far from it. Qingyi still provides hands down the biggest damage buffs to your on-field DPS, with the caveat that this buff is only during a narrow stun window. How powerful that is in actuality depends on your ability to take advantage of that stun window. So for someone like Dullahan, this is perfect, and I would still say that Qingyi is still her premier support. Caeser on the other hand is definitely on the same level as Qingyi in terms of time to stun, but her enemy damage buff and her 1000 attack damage buff isn't on the same level as Qingyi's stun damage multiplier when we look at it purely from a numbers perspective. However, that buff is also much easier to take advantage of. It's not locked behind a stun window and it lasts for a really long time. And then we also have to factor in her shields and the interrupt resistances that she provides. That definitely plays a huge part in her value. So I think to summarize our findings, stun-wise, Qingyi and Caeser are equals, but their value as team buffers is dependent on the teams that you play. If you own Qingyi already, then Caesar's pull value definitely drops, but if you don't have Qingyi, then Caeser is an amazing pull. If I didn't have either characters, well, honestly I think that I would prefer Caeser overall, but only by a smidge. I think that they're both super versatile and they're both really easy to slot into any teams, but I think Caeser wins gameplay wise simply because it just feels so damn good using her shield counter, and I also don't get RSI in my hands from mashing like I do with Qingyi. So I hope that was fun and interesting for you guys. If you have any questions, drop it down in the comments, and I'll catch you guys next time.